Let's look at salt and pepper shakers. Okay, what do we do when it comes to salt and pepper? Very often you will have your own salt and pepper shakers placed right in front of you. But sometimes there also will be communal. If they are in front of you and another guest asks you to pass them either salt or pepper, you pick up both of them. Remember, they are married. I hope our image of the salt and pepper shakers hugging will remind you of the fact that salt and pepper shakers are married and they travel together. Now remember, because fine dining spaces are very narrow, we would never stand up and start reaching for items. You might knock other people's glasses over. You might dip your clothes into your food. So what we do out of politeness, we ask others, people sitting next to us, to pass things to us. So let's say there is a guest sitting further away from me. They've asked me to pass on the salt and pepper, and then I will ask the guest sitting next to me, would you mind passing on the salt and pepper? And it will get passed. And then it's okay for the person receiving the salt and pepper to, once they've seasoned their meal, it's okay for them to then place the salt and pepper in front of them. They do not have to return it back to me. So that's your salt and pepper. The most important thing to remember is that they're married. Now, we're all aware that certain governments have campaigns where salt is not encouraged, so you might need to ask for salt nowadays, even in fine dining restaurants, if the salt shaker's missing. So do not think that they're being lazy or perhaps trying to save on money. It's just that they're following government guidelines. And the last thing to consider is the finger bowl. At the end of the meal, especially if you've been using your fingers, perhaps there was shellfish involved, waiters will bring a finger bowl and they will place it in front of you. A finger bowl has warm water in it with a slice of lemon. So just gently wash your fingers, try not to splash all over the place, and then you can use your napkin to just gently wipe your fingers on the top of your napkin. When you're done, place it to the left side of your dinner plate and the waiters will take it away. Now we are finally ready to start enjoying a lovely fine dining experience and start actually eating some food. So from my place setting, I know that we'll be served soup. Soup is a tricky dish to eat because remember, you always want to keep that book on the top of your head, so there is no dipping of the head when it comes to eating soup. Now, before we even start eating soup, let's just talk about soup spoons. Have you noticed from our previous slide that there is an oval soup spoon and a round soup spoon? Do you know why? Some of you might already know that the shapes have to do with the consistency of the soup. If the soup is clear, then we use an oval spoon, which is rather shallow. But if the soup is thick and creamy, we use the round soup, which is a bit more deeper. It is much easier to eat, and we eat soup in the Western culture, to eat soup which is clear and sip it from a shallower and more pointy spoon. But when it comes to creamy soups, it's easier to scoop it with a more rounder and deeper spoon. So let's start with a lovely clear soup. The soup is served. It will very often be hot, so don't blow on it. We do not blow on our food, and we certainly do not dip our head down to smell the food. I know some cultures, it's part of their tradition to smell the food, But again, remember, in the Western style dining, we tried to eat in such a way that it doesn't draw attention to us. You will pick up your spoon with your right hand and you will let it rest on your middle finger. What you don't want is to hold your cutlery so that it looks like you're holding a pencil. It's got to be an elegant affair. It just very gently rests on your middle finger. The soup is served. Allow for a couple of minutes just for it to cool down, and then you will want to scoop your soup from one edge of the plate to another. And remember, if you think of your soup plate as a clock face, and we have 12 o'clock at the top and 6 o'clock at the bottom, you will want to be scooping the soup from 6 o'clock up to the 12 o'clock, and only load the spoon about 2/3. Do not put too much soup in your spoon because you need to bring the soup up to your mouth. That's the challenge of eating soup. A lot of the times people want to dip down. Do not overload the soup spoon. You can, if the soup, if you're worried it might drip, you can very gently get rid of any possible drops and then bring the soup to your mouth. Now, you might have already noticed that I am keeping everything in terms of the movement coordinated to my waist. Fine dining spaces are very small spaces, so you can't stick your elbows out. You might poke somebody's eye out. You might knock their spoon or fork. So you will want to imagine that your hands are on a train track. There are two parallel train tracks running here, you know, just skimming your waist. So however we manipulate and use our cutlery, it's going to be on these two train tracks. That's why when I pick up the spoon and I scoop the soup and bring it to my mouth, I'm working in this plane. I'm never sticking my elbow out, which means that I can never eat the spoon from the pointy front edge. A lot of the people stick the whole spoon into their mouth from this angle, but because we need to, you know, ride the train on these two train tracks, the spoon has to be angled away from you. And also, when you do sip the spoon, you sip it from this edge of the side of the spoon. If the soup is really hot, the trick is to perhaps not start right in the middle. You can scoop from the edge, but still on that vertical plane. It is okay when you are resting and perhaps another guest has asked you a question. It's okay to rest your soup spoon if your soup plate is shallow. Sometimes we might be served soup in a soup cup. A soup cup we rather narrow, and then the soup spoon might stick out, usually will stick out. Now the wonderful thing is that the soup cup will be actually served on a serving plate, on a saucer. So you can use this saucer to rest your spoon on when you're resting and needing to talk. So basically any crockery that's rather narrow and that when you rest your cutlery in it makes the cutlery stick out, we actually try to use saucers to rest our spoons on. And again, the same rule apply for the round and a bit more of a deeper spoon. You would also eat a creamy soup the same way you eat a clear soup, right? Scooping, bringing the soup to your mouth and sipping the soup from the edge. A couple of further tips regarding to soup is when we are sipping the soup from the edge of the soup spoon, we want to make sure that we are doing that quietly. There is a huge temptation, and especially if the soup is hot, to start slurping the soup. Please do not slurp your soup. Now, this is a skill that does need practice. So you might need to serve yourself soup at home and have a couple of goes and practice and see the amount of poise and the amount of steadiness it's required to eat your soup elegantly. Now remember, I keep saying it, I will reiterate it again. Fine dining is an elegant affair. We've seen that when we are buttering and breaking off a bread roll. It's the same with the soup. Now, your soup might be quite delicious and you really want to make sure you get the very last of it. So it's okay to gently tilt your soup plate away from you to catch the very few last spoonfuls of your delicious soup. It's perfectly fine to do so. Now when you are done, for shallow soup bowls, it's okay to leave your soup spoon in the plate, but if the soup bowl is accompanied with a service plate, then please place it on your service plate so the waiters can easily take it away.